a very quick 7-step process which allows for you to consider any parameter at any point of time. Okay, it allows for you to iterate around this process, because this is not set in stone. Today you like Duke, tomorrow you found something about Duke and you don't like Duke, so you don't want to go to Duke University, right? So in that case, then what you do, right? And let's say that your father's colleague son is studying somewhere else, and your father's colleague recommended that university, so you want to add that to the list. Then how do you start with your selection process, etc.? So our approach is a very holistic approach and is literally a very structured scientific approach, which will help you to arrive at your decisions in a very simple manner. Okay, so we start off where we left off last time, so where we know how to do the research on the schools, right? So then what happens is, right now my request to you is, please open your part 1 of your worksheet. So everyone has access to the handouts. So please open part 1 of your worksheet right now. And after you're done, can you please type in part 1 yes? That will be very helpful for me to know like how many of you have downloaded. Just say part 1 yes. All right. That looks like majority of you are having it. Thanks guys for being so prompt. Awesome. Okay. So first thing that we're going to do is take a look at the parameters and identify, among all the 1500 parameters that are probably shown here, what is it that I want to consider? Simple as that. Okay. So for this, what we do is we have a very simple approach for it. Okay. So what we do is we're going to suggest that, see, all the whites are going to be editable. All the others are not going to be editable. So you can see that easily. So let's say that, you are going to spend about, say, 35 lakhs. And yeah, is that 35 lakhs? Okay, I'm just going to write it. That's better. So I'm going to spend 35 lakhs to 45 lakhs. Okay, not in dollars, in rupees. Okay, all right. So you're going to have an ideal preference. Then you're going to say that, what, I want to do it within 3 terms. Okay, or you might say that I want to do it within 2 years. Okay, or you might say I want only a 1-year program. Okay, depending on whatever it is. All right. And see, look at this average salary, region, bone, etc. So, like this, you start listing down your ideal preference. Okay. See, why am I asking you to do this step later? Is because you will not know your ideal preference unless you know what's on offer. So, that is why you started with your research worksheet. See, because you have researched on Harvard University, you will know that the average salary that a Harvard University person probably can expect is around, say, $65,000 or $75,000 and so on. Because you did the research on Harvard University, you know that the cost of living there is going to be about $2,000 per month, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you can start looking at, what do you call it, as, like having ideal preferences for each of your parameters. Why? Because you already did the research. As simple as that. So here you can say that, I want the data science. Okay, these are something that has to be mandatory, and so on. Okay, so let's look at this. So then what happens after you're doing this, after you started like listing down all the courses and everything else and all the other parameters or ideal preference, you then start looking at the importance of it. So some of you might say cost is a very important parameter. So you might say, yes, it is important. Okay. And then you say, how do I negotiate it? So meaning, like, are you willing to change that 45 lakhs to something else? So are you willing to say, what does this mean? If I say yes, what does it mean? It means that yes, 45 lakhs can become 55 lakhs. Okay. Or 35 lakhs can become, yeah, I'm willing to negotiate on this range. Okay. So then some of you will say, yes, I'm, this is an important factor, but I'm willing to negotiate on it. Okay. Some of the others might say, you know what? Duration is not that much of an important factor. Okay. But I'm not willing to negotiate on it. Okay. So you might even say that. Okay, it is not an important factor to me, but I'm not willing to, negotiate that much also on it. So you might say that. Okay, something being important is different than you being willing to, change that parameter. All right, so that is like that. So similarly, you start like filling it up. Okay, so you might say, what, the specialization track is very important to me, and I will not compromise on it. So it is a non-negotiable factor for me. Okay, so like this, you start filling out the various different things. Okay, and similarly, you might say that, the presence of so many institutions of my choice in that graduate school is not that important to me, and I don't really worry about it, because I don't really care. So you can say like that also. So like this, what happens, you start filling out parameters that are important to you as well as negotiable. When I say negotiable, what do I mean by that is you're willing to change it. Okay, so for example, region, you will say that I want to get into a place where there is EC work permit, okay, where there is ECPR. All right, I want to get in a place where there is more research. Okay, so all of this can come in as a region. So that is why, if you look at the research on grad schools, we had an assessment where you will be able to find out which region will work better for you. Right, so do you remember this? So let me just pull that up for you. So if you guys look at this handout in March, right? Oh, sorry about that. Looks like I was trying to run it up. I didn't want to run the webinar. You guys can look at it later. See, here is the, yeah. So when you look into this particular course and in March, you had this whole thing. You were able to look at like what's the duration, which is a GRE, blah blah blah, etc. etc. And then also have like this one. And when you look at the handout, you also had a handout, which talked about which region to go to. So this is what I'm referring to. Okay. So please like download it and sorry, this is the one. You're able to see my screen now. So this is what I'm referring to. It is in the focus of the month session where research on grad school. So this is what you guys did last time. Okay. And when you looked at the region and the preference and all that, you will be in a position to understand what it is. Okay. So moving forward, anyway, so we already know like how to work on the regions, how to work on the things, and so on and so forth, right? And so that is how what we do is we start populating this. You say, region is very important to me. Okay, and I'm not willing to negotiate on the region. So you might say that, after doing all this, I have arrived at the fact that Australia is good for me. Okay, so I am not willing to compromise on the fact that I want to study in Australia. So this is not negotiable for me. Okay, so like this, you start filling out the parameters. And this ideal preference, as I told you, requires research. You will have to do the research on multiple schools, and only then you will be able to like find out what is possible for you. Okay, so now you saw. So this is the first step. All right, so going back to where we started, so once this is the very first step, right, that you do in order to start shortlisting schools. Okay, so wherein you start filling out your preference and your degree of importance and the degree of negotiability. Okay, in some things, here there will be a lot of gray areas. What do I mean by gray areas? See, for example, it is very hard to differentiate between the research work of two faculty members. Okay, because you can't say that one faculty is better than the other. Okay, you always have to say if one faculty member is better than the other faculty member, how so? In according to what? According to what parameter, and so on. So that is why this way of approach of identifying whether it is an important parameter to you and how much of leeway do you have in order to modify things becomes easier. So this is the first step that you have to undertake. All right, so with that, like, let's move to the next one, so which is a very interesting thing. So then what you do is, after you have done the selection criteria and categorize them, you look at the decision matrix. So let me just quickly tell you the decision matrix using the worksheet itself. And I hope that you guys are using the worksheet right now, right? Along with me and trying to like work on things. See, you might need a little bit more time for the ideal preference, but most of us will be able to tell, hey, cost is important to me. It is not important to me at this point of time. And please note that we are very well aware that this factors will also change. Okay, so this quadrant is nothing but it is a quadrant of important and non-negotiable. Okay, so can you tell me which is important? This is all important. Non-negotiable, which is no, right? So wherein I say a no. So this is an example of a important and non-negotiable one, right? So what is that factor? The factor is that of the specialization track and courses. So this comes as the one of the factors here. Okay. And similarly, what do I do? So this is an important parameter and it is negotiable. It is important, but it's negotiable. Okay. So it is important, but it's negotiable comes here. All right. So, and then this is not important, not negotiable. Okay. So it comes here, not important and not negotiable. So this is basically the duration, I guess, and so on and so forth. So you guys start like filling out the quadrants accordingly. And then what happens is, then you obviously are going to be researching on the schools. Here it's going to be grad schools, it can be B schools, it doesn't matter. So you're going to like look at the research that's needed, okay, that you did already, and then check if the grad schools or the B schools satisfy all your criteria in the important category. Okay, so in the most important category, like, does it satisfy all your criteria? What do I mean by that? Example, I said I want only data science specialization track. Okay, so does the course that I am looking at satisfy that criteria? It has to satisfy. Okay, and like I also told that the cost is an important parameter for me. So does the course that I am looking at have fall within the budget range of 35 lakhs to 45 lakhs per annum? Okay, so that is the deal that we're talking about. So whatever is in the quadrant of important and whether it's important and non-negotiable will be the most important criteria, right? So typically location, cost, the program curriculum, the structure, the duration of the course, all of them will fall under the most important criteria for many people. Okay, but then for some of them, depending on the need, right, depending on what you're assuming and what you're thinking, it can modify. So for some of you, you might say that I don't really care about which faculty are teaching. You know why? Because I'm going there to get a job. Okay, so I just am more worried about the coursework. So then that's why the coursework might be very important for somebody. And for some of them, they might say that, see, ongoing research is not that important for me. And it is not, I don't really like, it is negotiable. It's fine. I don't really like have any preference for it. Okay. But some of them might say that, you know what? No, no. This lab that is there, the lab and the research center and the institute which are present, are absolutely critical for me. I am not going to compromise on that. Okay, so like this. So for example, what they might say, I want a specialized lab which is working on this kind of project. Only then I will choose that university or program. Okay, so like this, what happens is you're going to be filling up your list of things. And then what happens is like, and then probably like A, B, C, or whatever. So you have all these different things. So you start filling up your decision matrix, and then what happens is starting to analyze your various research programs and other things accordingly. So this is how we do the decision matrix. Okay, and here's an example. Okay, see, the culture is a big thing. Culture can talk about language, it can talk about customs, it can talk about see particular value system that exists in that particular society. Example, Germany versus, let's say, Singapore. Very different cultures, right? You all will agree. Okay, it's that way. Curriculum, very simple, right? So like this, what happens, this decision matrix will change for others. Do you all agree? See, you might look at Harvard University, I might look at Harvard University, but my selection criteria for Harvard University, why I picked it, might be very different than your selection criteria. Will you guys agree with that? Yeah, do you agree that the selection criteria or the reasons why someone picked a particular program or the same program can be different? Yeah, yes, definitely. So definitely it can be very different. Okay, but as I said, some things are more important to us than others. All right, always that is always the fact, and this is exactly what we want to bring about. Okay, and then of course what happens is the preferences that you have. So that's why I asked you, what is the intake? See, if you're going for spring of 2022, okay, your program may not even be available in spring, because you know that many programs are not available in spring, right? Fall is the big one, and fall is the one which has it. All right, so when we say preferences, we are talking about which intake are you going, what is your which is the program you want. You want MS in CS, you want MS in CS, you want MS in ML, what is the program you want? Okay, And then, like, what is the area of specialization you're looking at? What is the country you're looking at? So these are main preferences that we ask you. Okay. And once you do that, you get a school list based on that. All right. So depending on some of the things, and here's an example of the preferences and other things that were listed by the things. Do not worry if you have already signed up for the admissions consulting. A lot of you guys will be in a person to check this out. Like, you'll be getting the initial school list from us based on your preferences, and we'll be sending out a form to get the preferences from you. And we will need the region. We will definitely need the kind of program and degree you're looking for, and we'll also need a few other criterion, right, from you to give you the initial school list. Okay. And once I do the initial school list, what do? You go up and start researching on all these programs. Okay. So the reason that we give you this is, remember the 12 to 17 schools that we give you. So based on your profile, based on your preferences, you will be getting a list. And all you have to do now is again go to Arizona State University, find out like what's happening in the MS in aerospace program. Okay. And then start researching on the schools and filling up the research school. Okay. So it will look like anything like this. So here are some of the examples. Okay. So for example, look at faculty line. Someone says that, ideal preferences, they really want the top experts in data science. It is not that important parameter, and they are okay to negotiate on it. Okay. And then they found one professor. But the unfortunate thing, the comment is that the other professors are not directly working on data science. Okay, you can see like how that comments are there and how the facts are there. Okay, the fact that it is 66,400 for tuition fee for a year means that it is exceeding the budget of $50,000 that probably someone wanted. Okay. So similarly, you can. I would want to spend a moment on this slide for you guys to take a deeper look at it. All right. So look at the cost. So it says beyond my budget. Okay. Look at the duration of the course. The person is okay to negotiate on it, and they do consider it to be an important factor, but they're okay to negotiate on it. All right. And then similarly, look at the employment trend. So they are making their observations. Saying that this is what it is that I want. Okay, and so on and so forth. All right, and look at the top courses that somebody has picked up. Right, they're making the observation that, hey, it's a good choice of course for me. Right, it is not necessarily filling out the fact but doing it. So like this, what you do is you typically do it for all the schools that we send out to you in the initial school list. Okay, and even if you are doing it by yourself, you can obviously do that same thing, because you have the access to the sheet and you can get started on the work. Okay, so like this, you start working on the research sheet and then filling it up. Okay, so now what happens from one sheet, one research, one school, you have many schools for which you've done the research, and you also know the criteria for selection now. Okay, and then what happens is how you start shortlisting the schools. Okay, so you identify whether it satisfies all your top criteria. And what criteria are we talking about? It has to be important criteria, non-negotiable criteria for you, right? So you really are considering whether it satisfies all your criteria or whether it does most of it. Okay, and then you're also going to look at, like, are you going to be considering it for shortlisting, or no, not at all? Are you not going to be considering the school? Are you going to be dropping it out of your list? Okay, and so on. And then I know that most of you guys are also working on GRE right now. So please note that GRE offers around 4 schools to which you can send your score reports. That's already part of the fee that GRE collected from you. ETS collected from you, right, for the GRE. So therefore, make use of that. So when you're doing this exercise, so for example, if there's a school which satisfies all your criteria, don't you think you should be applying to that? Right, so then you will say, I will use it as part of my the GRE thing that I need to address. Okay, and if the school is not like satisfying your criteria, technically you should not be considering it for your GRE, right, and so on. Okay, but maybe if it satisfies most of your criteria and you're willing to compromise, then you can go ahead and add that to the list as well. Okay, and then of course you are going to look at the final set of schools to which you're going to apply. Obviously, as I told you, please don't apply to anything beyond 6 to 8, because if you're applying to beyond 6 to 8, it shows that you have not done the research and you've not done the shortlisting at that point of time. You have just postponed your decision of deciding on which school to apply. Okay, you're just throwing the darts kind of a thing. All right. So that's why, like, the final shortlist, as I told you, typically we only suggest around 6 to 8 schools at the max. And many of our clients only apply to 5 schools, right? And so on. So final shortlist becomes, possible for you. Okay. So after you do the final shortlist, also, now comes a big challenge. So you as a client, I'm going to call, like, say, Jane Doe. Okay. Jane Doe as a client has completely, decided that Purdue is the best university which satisfies all your requirements. Now the question remains: will this Jane Doe be able to get into Purdue? Okay, because that's the biggest question. So now you did all this great exercise, right? You researched on schools, you identified criteria which were important to you, then you saw, like, which are the schools that matched that criteria, and you have shortlisted them. Amazing. So it's very easy PC, lemon squeezy, as my son keeps telling. So that's very easy for someone to do. But then what? Then comes a major factor, and this is exactly where we play a big role. So, how do you know that Purdue is a school to which you apply, and what are the chances for you to get an admit at Purdue? Right. So that is exactly where we come in. All right. So after you've done the research and done this, right, we help you to evaluate all your parameters. So we take all your qualitative and your quantitative parameters and then give you the categorization. All right. So from the shortlisted school that you have, and after we get your GRE, after we get your completed resume, which is ready for submission, why do we need it? Because, yeah, unless I know what kind of projects you've done, unless I know, like, what kind of work you have done, it is not easy for us to give you the categorization. Okay. So unless we know a lot of details from you, right, which is like ready for submission, after we have all the scores, the most current CGPA from your this one from your college, etc., we start the categorization of the schools. So we help you with the categorization and tell you about, like, which is safe, which is ambitious, which is match, how much time is involved for any of these, and so on. Okay, like, so sorry, how many chances? Sorry, not time. How much? What are the chances for doing it? Okay. So here's the important news for you all. Till about step 6, you will keep on iterating. So what do I mean by that? See, your program might change because you might have had more insight. The universities, the kind of universities, the type of universities might change. Okay, and this is what happens more often. People take the GRE once, okay, and then they get a score of, say, they had thought that they will get around 330, but at the end of the day, they're getting up a score of 305. So then what happens is they are somehow not competitive enough for many of the schools that they were considering before. It's a question of eligibility, it's a question of chances, right? So, so for example, when you were looking at 330, Purdue was something that you were definitely could have considered as part of your profile. But when you're having 310, and the fact that there are some other things in your profile which are not to your advantage, what happens is then Purdue does not become a match or safe option, it becomes an ambitious option. All right, so then what happens? You need to consider more safe options, more match options. So this has been often the case. So people come and say that, you know what, I have a 305, but I'm not going to apply to some other school. So I'm not going to retake the GRE. I'm very happy with this. Then what I tell them is, you know what, the kind of schools that you're looking at with only 305, there are multiple factors that may not work in your favor, so hence consider one or two additional schools for, which can be your safe options. So up to, say, step 6, what happens is it becomes a little bit of an iterative process. Okay, why is it iterative? Because you can keep changing your schools or programs or other things until you are able to get your proper preferences out and proper things out. Okay, but then the categorization is done only when we have all your complete details, and then of course is when we help in and we pitch in. Okay, so this person, as you saw, we had shown like multiple different things and all that. So the person did apply to all those schools and ultimately got an offer from admit in all the schools actually. So that was the outcome. So they did work on their profile in depth and so on. And this is the result that all of us want. At the end of the day, we want you to be successful in the applications that you have put forth, but most importantly, have submitted your best applications to all these schools. All right, so that's kind of the deal.